When the lockdowns and COVID restrictions were introduced in March of 2020, some of us called them out for exactly what they were. Medical tyranny, oppression, totalitarianism, a trap, whatever you want to call them. It was all about demoralizing the public to such a degree that they would scream for any solution in order to escape the misery they were enduring. The vaccine was obviously being set up as their salvation. It was an obvious Hegelian crisis. A problem was created, which was a fake pandemic. The lockdown resulted, robbing people of their rights and freedoms, shutting down the economy, obliterating our social lives, placing our plans on hold, and turning our cities and urban areas into eerily abandoned ghost towns. The solution to this intolerable situation was for people to accept being injected on a semi-regular basis with an experimental gene therapy, which they didn't need for a virus with a higher survival rate than the flu. They were also required to accept a digital surveillance state, whereby they would need to keep a record of their vaccine status on their smartphone or in paper form, in the form of a QR code certificate, in order to take part in society. No jab, no job, no jab, no travel, no jab, no entry to the pub, restaurant, football stadium, hospital, or plane. Sadly, the vast majority of the docile public complied with this, many of them failing to see that the lockdowns and pandemic scaremongering were nothing more than a trap in order to coerce them into mass vaccination. Others reluctantly rolled up their sleeves because they were terrified of losing their jobs or being denied the right to travel. The state took away everyone's rights and freedoms and placed them behind the paywall barrier of the vaccine. Our governments turned our basic liberties and inalienable human rights into goodies and sweets to be dished out like treats to children for demonstrating good behaviour. Those of us who sounded the alarm about the pandemic hoax from the beginning may have been ridiculed, laughed at, or scorned for some time, but we clearly stated that the imposition of lockdown tyranny and medical martial law marked a watershed moment in world affairs. A 9/11 style event that would change history and produce an entirely new paradigm for the 21st century. We told people they cannot comply their way back to freedom. Complying with tyranny only invites more tyranny. Accepting abuse only encourages the abuser to escalate further. And indeed, throughout 2022 and indeed 2023, we have seen an escalation in that abuse. And across the Western world, we are seeing our electricity infrastructure, fuel supplies, and farming industries being undermined under the justification of fighting the never-ending bogeyman of climate change that just never seems to get solved. Simultaneously, our financial system and currencies are undergoing a controlled demolition of their own, with the excuse being the economic fallout from the war in Ukraine. In truth, the financial system is collapsing because of the lockdowns which caused hyperinflation. This is being done deliberately to make our current financial system unworkable, thus justifying the introduction of programmable digital currency, where an individual's financial freedom is a thing of the past. Our food systems, oil, gas, and electricity supplies are all being basically dismantled, and all of this is being done to usher in a new age of rationing under the guise of saving the planet from rising CO2 levels. Carbon credit wallets for every individual will ensure the government can micromanage every aspect of your life, from where you can travel to and how often, to what you can eat, how much energy you can use, and what consumer products you can buy and when. In addition, our right to private property is also being slowly undermined, as the globalists want us to accept being a society of permanent renters. You will own nothing and be happy, says the World Economic Forum. Well, COVID was about conditioning humanity into accepting their slavery and control, and the globalists have continued on this trajectory. They wish for all natural food production and farming to be stopped and replaced with artificial food production that they control. They want a future where nations and individuals are no longer permitted or capable of producing food for themselves. Food security and independence is to be made impossible, and we are to be made completely and totally reliant upon the state for our most basic needs. An impoverished and dependent population being therefore powerless and easy to control. They want people to change their diet, to switch to unhealthy lab-grown meat or insects, which will likely end up producing a sick population. A sick and impoverished society that owns nothing and can't look after itself, well, they sure will be easy for tyrants to control, won't they? Now, we're experiencing what I would describe as a multi-vector assault on the global food supply. From calls to curb meat and dairy production to help reduce CO2 emissions, supply chain breakdowns because of COVID, bird flu outbreaks, animal feed cost increases, and of course the economic devastation and sanctions caused by the Ukraine-Russia war. And I suspect after the food shortages end, digital IDs could become commonplace for access to basic stuff in our society, but another agenda will be pushed simultaneously, which is the radical transformation of Western diets. On that particular subject, I found this document on the World Economic Forum website. It's a white paper called Meat, the Future, a Roadmap for Delivering 21st Century Protein. It was published in 2019. Executive summary. Academic analysis shows it will be impossible for a global population of 10 billion to consume the amount and type of protein typical of current diets in North America and Europe if we want to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) and meet the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. To get on track by 2030 with full delivery by 2050 requires a transformation in the global system for protein provision. This will likely follow a decade of transition where existing and future methods of meat and protein provision overlap and where new approaches, both animal-based and beyond, disrupt and displace the old. This evolutionary process may both learn from and draw parallels with the energy transition we are currently undergoing as renewables and other low-carbon energy systems start to scale and replace 20th century fossil fuel-based energy systems. There is no silver bullet or single solution for this transformation. Instead, progress is simultaneously needed across multiple areas if society is to be successful in finding ways to deliver on the growing protein needs for human health while maintaining a healthy planet. Yeah, I'm sure radically altering the diet that our ancestors evolved with is really in the best interests of human health. Tyrants always begin by controlling and limiting the food supply. I don't think the technocrats will be eating bugs and lab-grown slop, do you? I suspect they will continue to fly around the world in their private jets while we are denied the right to have a car. They'll drive their fancy cars and eat the finest red meat and organic dairy available. They effectively want to put humanity on a diet that, in my view, doesn't sound much better than tins of cat food. The transformation of today's global system for protein provision will require progress along three interconnected pathways to deliver on tomorrow's global protein needs: alternative proteins, current production systems, consumer behavior change. The future offers plenty of innovation potential in this regard, and the technological advancements of the fourth industrial revolution present significant tools to make these pathways a reality. Two new reports highlight how emerging and existing technologies can provide critically needed technical solutions for these pathways. Alternative Proteins, prepared by the Oxford Martin School, explores how advances in food processing through to highly sophisticated biotechnology have created new products that closely mimic the experience of eating traditional animal-based protein. Options for the livestock sector in developing and emerging economies to 2030 and beyond, prepared by the International Livestock Research Institute, discuss how smallholder livestock systems can use technology and other tools to deliver on the growing demand in emerging economies while transforming the livelihoods of some of the globe's most vulnerable populations. Beyond the research, multi-stakeholder dialogues have highlighted how new feed technologies such as insect, alga, and micronutrition, and technology-based systems for growing feed, data science, microbiome technologies for plants and soil can provide lower environmental impact feedstock solutions for current industrial-scale livestock and poultry producers. To exploit these innovations and technologies and make the necessary progress along these three pathways by 2030 requires a collective set of strategies that go beyond market-based technical solutions. These need to be able to accelerate transformative change in today's global system for protein provision quickly and at scale, but in a socially and politically inclusive manner. 4 specific strategies for delivering 21st century protein through to 2030 have consequently been identified, illuminating the most effective drivers of change within this context. These strategies suggest a roadmap for delivering 21st century protein. Number 1, highlighting the multiple benefits to society of transforming today's protein systems. Number 2, promoting pathways to achieve cost parity across choices that deliver on multiple benefits. Number 3, pursuing an intentional transition decade using narratives. Oh yeah, they sure love their narratives at the World Economic Forum. We are basically living our lives through their narratives at this point. Number 4, developing innovation systems and collaboration platforms for research and action. And here's the roadmap that they outline. So it says a roadmap for delivering 21st century protein. Delivering 21st century protein by 2030, and as we approach a population of 10 billion by 2050, will require unprecedented collaboration by stakeholders and sectors and an unparalleled ambition that stretches to every human being on the planet as they make their daily food choices. So it says pathways to 21st century protein delivery, accelerating alternative proteins. So it says meat replacements, e.g. plant burger, cultured lab-grown, insects, alga-based, fungi-based, traditional processed plant-based, that's things like tofu, traditional plant-based alternatives, peas, beans, nuts, jackfruit, etc., meat extenders, plant or other, as a partial substitute, advancing current production systems, sustainable animal feedstocks, novel animal feedstocks, sustainable intensification, use of food and industry waste streams, new breeds of cattle, reduction in antibiotic use, land use and elimination of deforestation, manure and slurry management, driving consumer behavior change, flexitarian diets, diversification within per capita diet, right sizing of diet, shift towards protein equity per capita. That sounds like it could be tied into, say, for example, a carbon score perhaps. Reduction of food waste, cost and access parity. Sounds delightful. All we can do at this point is to try to secure our own food supplies by establishing microeconomies within small local communities. And I've said this many times. The masses are generally now believing everything they're told in the media day by day. They have little understanding of the true reason why macro geopolitical events are taking place, and most of them will be caught completely by surprise when things get really bad. Social distancing queues outside of supermarkets back during the first lockdown in 2020 were about not only experimenting on the population to see how obedient they could be, but also they were about conditioning their behavior to get used to the idea of queuing for food like in communist countries, getting them ready for food shortages. Let's move on now. You might remember some time ago this video was doing the rounds on social media. It's of Barbara Baarsma. She's the CEO of Carbon Bank at Rabobank. Just in case you're wondering while watching this clip, yes, she is an agenda contributor for the World Economic Forum. What a surprise. Here she is speaking on the radio station BNR.
Als we nou eens iedereen, laten we beginnen in Nederland, die uitstootrechten verdelen en dat elk huishouden of elke burger een hoeveelheid uitstootrechten krijgt, zodat we opgeteld niet meer uitstoten dan onze grens. Vervolgens kunnen we, het zit in een carbon wallet, kan je dat noemen.
Kan je het bijkopen.
Ja, en dan kan je, als ik wil vliegen, koop van iemand die niet gaat vliegen, omdat hij daar bijvoorbeeld geen geld voor heeft. Die verkoopt aan mij zijn carbon uitstootrechten en krijgt daardoor een beetje meer geld. Ja, of diegene woont in een kleiner huurhuis en ik woon in een groot huis. Ik heb dus meer uitstootrechten nodig om mijn huis te verwarmen. Mm-hmm. En zo kunnen mensen met een smalle portemonnee ook iets verdienen aan vergroening.
She says, let's ensure that every household or every citizen in the Netherlands receives a certain amount of carbon emissions rights. This way we can ensure that we do not emit more than our yearly limit. Your emissions will be stored in a carbon wallet. So if you want to fly, I buy some carbon emissions rights from someone who can't afford to fly, for example. This way, this poor person can earn some extra money. Or if someone lives in a small house, he can sell his emission rights to someone who lives in a big house. This way, poor people can benefit from the green economy. Unbelievable. This is a level of onerous regulation and control over our lives that will just impoverish people in the name of fighting climate change, which never seems to get solved, but will ultimately just suck the joy out of life. And it also sounds like the richer you are, the less you'll have to worry about any of this bullshit. You can just sort of buy your way around it by purchasing more credits or whatever. It's the average Joe who's going to feel the oppressive shackles of this level of regulation, as if people don't have enough to worry about with how expensive life has become recently. Something like this will just further erode our living standards so that we're just scraping to get by. Then there's the Swedish fintech company Doconomy. Back in 2019, in collaboration with MasterCard, they launched a credit card that tracks your carbon emissions. Here's a clip from their video.
But instead of introducing a premium credit card with the typical benefits that encourages further mass consumption, Doconomy did the opposite by launching Do Black, the world's first credit card with a carbon limit. Simply put, it's the first credit card ever to stop you from overspending. Not based on your available funds, but rather on the levels of CO2 emissions caused by your consumption. Do Black helps you track your climate impact and ensures that you reduce it by 50% in line with the UN 2030 recommendation.
The core purpose of Do Black is not only the ability to measure the impact of your consumption, but also bringing it to a direct halt, making it a radical tool against climate change.
For years, credit cards have put a limit on our credit. Do Black puts a limit on our impact.
So there you have it. Your ability to spend your money will be curtailed because every product will display its environmental impact in the form of a carbon emissions rating, and if you exceed your carbon score for a given period, your purchasing ability can be disabled. Ultimately, everything we've talked about today comes down to the desire of a small minority to control the majority, using whatever elaborate bullshit justification they can conjure. They achieved this in 2020 by terrifying people into believing they needed to be locked down for their safety and injected for their safety and for the greater good. They're now telling us to change our diet for the greater good of the planet and curtail our lifestyle also. They won't be doing any of these things, of course, but that should go without saying. Again, it's always come down to one thing: mass non-compliance. Stop doing what they're telling you to. Thank you very much for watching this video. I do need your help to continue to keep doing this work. You can support my work via the link below to my subscribe star. It's very much appreciated and helps to keep the show going. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.